It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, and this show is brought to you by MichiganMushrooms.net. You can check out MichiganMushrooms.net and go to their Facebook page, Michigan Mushrooms LLC. If this is the first time you're listening to this show, please check out OppermanReport.com. We have a whole bunch of shows on there for members only. It's exclusive just for members. And they're not played live on Friday night. They're not played live on Saturday afternoons. So you can sign up and become a member and constantly updated. We do sometimes 3, 4, 5 shows a week. Now today, we got a very special guest, Dr. E. Michael Jones, author of the book Abu Ghraib and the American Empire. He's also just recently written a book, Church and the Jews. And you can check out his website, culturewars.com. Dr. Jones, are you there?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jones, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Dr. E. Michael Jones?
Well, I started off life as a teacher. I taught in Germany. I came back in the 70s, came back to the United States. I taught in Germany. Just a small reference to that. I had a bout of nostalgia about my teaching in Germany in the 1970s, and I ended up writing a novel called The Ratcatcher, which is available on Kindle Books if you're interested. But taught in Germany, taught English there, came back to the United States, got a Ph.D., got a job at St. Mary's College outside of South Bend, Indiana, as a professor, assistant professor of American literature on a tenure-track contract, and got fired 1 year later for being against abortion. So I kept trying to explain, no, I was against abortion. I got fired. I was at a Catholic college. I got fired for being against abortion. And they say, well, how can this be? How can this be? And I said, well, the feminists had taken over the college, and it was Catholic in name only. So that led me to have a second thought about academe. And so I decided to get out of academe, and I started a magazine called Fidelity, which is now called Culture Wars. And I've been doing that for the past 35 years. I think it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because if you're in academe, you will never figure out what's going on, because your job is dependent on not figuring out what is going on. Your job is dependent on promoting the conventional narrative that the government wants promoted. And if you start saying something other than the conventional narrative, you will endanger the funding source of the university or college, and you'll get fired. So I was fortunate enough to have God take me out of that position and put me on my own. And as I said, I've been doing that for the past 35 years. It's allowed me to do a lot of independent research. I've written a whole raft of books. You mentioned 2 of them. I just did a history of capitalism, a very big book, 1,400 pages, called Barren Metal, a history of capitalism as the conflict between labor and usury. Just reading Michael Hudson's latest book, Killing the Host, and here we've realized great minds run in the same circles. We both came to the conclusion that the battle is usury, the oligarchs, the creditors, basically taking over governments throughout the world and stealing labor from the people who are the real producers of wealth.
Let me ask you this. How would you describe your politics? Are you to the right, to the left?
My politics are for the people against the oligarchs. This is an age-old conflict. It goes all the way back to Greece. The people are the 99%, the oligarchs are the 1%. The oligarchs maintain their hold on power by controlling all of the economy, the political economy, and they do this through a very simple form of looting known as usury. And the mechanism is compound interest. If you can get people to borrow money, eventually, all according to the rules of compound interest, all of the property in the world will end up in the hands of the oligarchs. And we are fast on our way to that situation right now. So I am a Democrat opposed to the oligarchs. Now, unfortunately, in the United States of America, no one represents that position. Both parties, both the Democrats and the Republicans, are basically oligarch institutions. They are oligarch mechanisms that are there. They exist to take oligarch money and transform it into the popular vote in elections to give the aura of respectability to basically the oligarchs' policy of looting the economies throughout the world.
So then you have no faith in the Sanders campaign?
Well, I think what you saw in New Hampshire was the people rejecting the mainline candidates of both parties. And I think what you saw after that was a shudder of fear going down the spine of the oligarchs.
Okay.
The 50 top contributors to the Republican Party met at a secret meeting in California. And the conclusion was we have to stop Trump. Now, the Republican Party has a long history of doing this. They are notorious for putting up fall guys so that they will lose the election and basically because the other party represents the interest of the oligarchs better. The Democrats are no different. The Clinton administration was a shameless sellout to the oligarchs, a sellout of the labor base of the Democratic Party to the oligarchs. I'm talking about the passage of GATT and NAFTA, as well as even more flagrant, the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act during the Depression at the hands of the three Jewish geniuses who appeared on the cover of Time magazine, Alan Greenspan, Larry Summers, and Robert Rubin. This was a total handover of the government to the oligarchs. And Obama has done nothing but continue that policy. Tim Geithner's bailout was nothing but a horrendous sellout of the American people into the interest of the oligarchs. So the parties are really not – there's no difference in this regard to the parties. The results in New Hampshire were a repudiation of both political parties. So Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump represent the opposite of what these parties currently stand for.
Okay, so you think that if Bernie did get in, that he would actually be for the people? Or he would have no chance?
He is the only one.
Okay.
He is the only one who is addressing the issue of debt.
All right.
Specifically student debt, which is a horrendous problem. I was there at Occupy Wall Street. It was totally misrepresented by the media. Fox News was talking about the demonstrators shitting on the sidewalk, things like that. These were people in their 20s who, for the most part, were holding little cards that said, I'm $50,000 in debt, and all I can get is an unpaid internship. That is the situation that caused Occupy Wall Street. In other words, it's the imposition of debt on this unsuspecting generation, and at the same time the simultaneous withdrawal of any meaningful well-paying job. So that was the cause of that. So it burned. I don't know what. I don't have a crystal ball here. I don't know whether Bernie Sanders is going to do what he says he's going to do. Obama certainly didn't do what he said he was going to do in the wake of the 2007-8 financial crisis. He did the exact opposite. Politicians are notorious for doing this. But I'm saying that the people are voting for Bernie Sanders because he says he's going to do something about debt, which is the principal problem right now across the world.
Okay, then let me ask you two questions. One is I want to point out to you that the use of obscenities and 7 dirty words, while we can do it and get away with it, it will limit the audience that we have. So if you can try to keep that on.
Okay. I was just quoting what they were saying.
I got you. No, listen, I don't care, but we would have a much bigger audience.
I will keep that in mind.
So okay, Bernie's saying all the right stuff. So do you support Bernie? And because my thinking is, he is saying all the right stuff, and the people supporting him are in the correct direction. So even if Bernie's not perfect, we get him in there, and then we keep moving in that direction. You know what I'm saying? And we have this base organized that's awake and knows what's going on.
Yes, you're right. I mean, the election always comes down to a choice between two people.
Right.
So at this point, it's premature to ask me who I would vote for, and it's always the lesser of two evils. But what I'm saying here is I just did a long interview with Phyllis Schlafly.
Okay.
The lady who who defeated the Equal Rights Amendment.
I remember.
Anyway, a brilliant grassroots organizer. Okay, she's 92 years old. We're sitting there in her living room. I'm interviewing her, and then suddenly her successor, the head of the Eagle Forum, stands up and announces he just got a news flash on his iPhone. Ashton Carter has removed all limitations for women in combat.
Right.
So it was one of those moments. Because Phyllis said, her campaign against the Equal Rights Amendment was basically, if you pass this, you'll have women in combat. Well, she defeated it, and we got women in combat. The other argument was, if you pass this, we'll have homosexuals getting married. Well, she defeated it, and we got that too. So the whole point here is, what exactly is the purpose of the political process here? She won fair and square, and everything she hoped to achieve was overturned by the oligarchs anyway. Now, she is smart enough to have learned from this lesson. She wrote a book in '64, which helped enormously to get Goldwater the nomination, called A Choice, Not an Echo. And the brilliant part of the book is the middle part, where she talks about the Republican Party, the habit they have of choosing losers to defend the principles, to defend the privileges of the oligarchs. The classic example would be Wendell Willkie. Nobody knew who Wendell Willkie was. He was a creation of Time Life and Madison Avenue. But he got the nomination because the oligarchs wanted Roosevelt to win. Closer to our time, I was involved with Pat Robertson and those organizations in the 90s. And I remember the 96 election. And there was Ralph Reed, who was the darling of the establishment at that point. And a friend of mine says, yeah, we're going to vote for Pat Buchanan, aren't we? Well, no, we're not. You could tell by the look on Ralph Reed's face that he thought this guy was a complete idiot to say something like that, because the fix was in. The fix was in because Bob Dole was going to get the nomination because the oligarchs wanted Bob Dole to destroy Pat Buchanan. That was the whole point of that nomination. They knew he wasn't going to win. They didn't need him to win because Clinton was doing their bidding. Clinton was the oligarch lackey. I mean, he was a Rhodes Scholar. That means you're there to do the bidding of the oligarchs. And so the only reason Bob Dole got the nomination, was to destroy Pat Buchanan and purge all of his supporters from the Republican Party. So I suspect that something similar is going to happen to Donald Trump. Now, after that 50 families met in 50 top backers of the Republican Party met in California, suddenly all the news changed. USA Today, headline, Jeb Bush, comeback kid. Well, what does this mean? Well, he finished 4th in New Hampshire. Now, this is ridiculous. This is a ridiculous editorializing under the guise of news. It's clear that the word has gone out that Jeb Bush is the anointed candidate of the oligarchs. You can depend on the Bush family to do the oligarchs' bidding. Trump is a wild card. No one knows what he's going to do. He told the Jews, for example, that he doesn't want their money. This was, I'm sure, a sign that he was very unpredictable and threatened to be his own man.
Well, then let me ask you this. With all the scandal in Trump's background, how come then why aren't they using that to get him out?
Oh, they'll use it. First of all, every choice is a choice between the lesser of two evils. So I'm not proposing canonization proceedings to start for Donald Trump. Okay, I'm just saying who will he be running against? If he's running against Bernie Sanders, I think a lot of people have to think, well, I don't know. I'll have to think this over. If he's running against Hillary Clinton, I don't think anybody's going to have a second thought other than the diehard aging feminists who were called up to New Hampshire to berate the young ladies for being traitors to their sex. I think that it's going to come down. It's always a choice between the lesser of two evils.
I was going to bring that up. What do you make of the whole Gloria Steinem statements? And seems farcical.
Well, it's a sign that first of all, feminism was a black operation. It was a psychological operation, basically to drive down wages.
Right.
Double the workforce, drive down wages. Everybody knows that now. Everybody knows that Gloria Steinem was working for the CIA. And so what this means when you're reduced to bringing in aged old ladies like Gloria Steinem, it means that you've lost the millennial vote. Now, why did you lose the millennial vote, specifically the female millennial vote? Well, because you're not talking about debt. That's why Bernie Sanders has that vote. The main issue in the lives of the millennials is debt, student loan debt. Their lives are being put on hold. That's a kind of crude way of saying it. But their lives are being put on hold because they can't get decent jobs. They can't get out from under the mountain of student debt. And Hillary is the oligarch's candidate. Her husband is the one who allowed the crash to happen when he handed the government, the financial government, over to Greenspan, Rubin, and Larry Summers. These are representatives of the oligarchs. Hillary is a representative of the oligarchs. She is going to force these young people, to pay off their debts at full face value, because that's what the oligarchs want. Even if it's going to wreck the economy, no matter how many lives it's going to wreck, that's what she stands for, and that's what those oligarchs are paying her to do. And in this sense, the oligarch candidates on the Republican side are no different. They are no different.
You know, that's so true. The student debt is so crippling, and you can't even get out of it with bankruptcy.
No, absolutely not.
It's unforgivable debt. And like you said, it puts your whole life on hold. You know, I'm 53 myself, you know, and I have a kid about to go into college too. So, you know, we're facing that whole thing. So, and we're Bernie supporters. We have by the way, too, I'm broadcasting from Nevada, and we have the caucus here on Saturday afternoon, which is why I was trying to get your endorsement. Okay. A little obvious there. But let's and by the way, too, you know, you say how everybody knows that Steinem is a CIA, you know, and was a Rockefeller, you know, the feminism was a Rockefeller operation. But the thing is, it's almost impossible to find a guest to come on the show and present that argument.
Well, there you have it. Aren't you glad I'm here?
Yeah, actually, I am. I'm very happy.
But see, part of the problem here is that all of the educational system, the entire educational system, has been taken over by the oligarchs.
Right.
And so as a result, it's very difficult to do research. I mean, in a sense, I go back to what I said at the beginning of the program. The only reason I can do the research I need to do is because I got kicked out of the university system 35 years ago. And it's not easy to do this. It's hard work. You have to spend a lot of time doing it. And you have to build up over time. And who wants to do that? Most people don't want to do that kind of stuff. Most people just like the cushy life of being a university professor where you produce nothing of any value whatsoever. You spend your life in committee meetings, you know, and look forward to when you can go home and enjoy your luxurious home and whatever. But that's what the university has become. It's been totally co-opted. And the Catholic University is every bit as bad, if not worse, than the standard state university. I'm talking specifically about the situation here at Notre Dame University, which was betrayed by Father Theodore Hesburgh and betrayed to the Rockefellers. I'm the one who broke that story, the whole connection between Hesburgh and the Rockefellers and birth control. The Rockefellers were the biggest promoters of birth control on this planet. for 40 years, from the 40s up until his death in 1979, 78 or 79. And he needed to co-opt the Catholic Church, and Hesburgh volunteered to do this for him. Volunteered to undermine the church's teaching on contraception, organized a meeting between John D. Rockefeller III and Pope Paul VI, at which John D. Rockefeller volunteered to write the Pope's birth control encyclical for him. What a decent guy John D. was to do that for the Pope. The Pope didn't do it. He came out against birth control, and then there was civil war, and Hesburgh stole Notre Dame University from the Catholic Church, and it has remained stolen ever since to this day. What is the net result of theft, this theft of the Catholic Church? The net result is that a university that was dedicated to educating young Catholic people at reasonable cost has become one more usury mill, condemning whoever goes there, Catholic or whatever, to debt bondage. It cost $250,000 to get a Notre Dame education.
Oh, my God.
Do you realize how long it takes someone to pay off $250,000? Do you know what the starting salary for teachers is in Indiana? It's $30,000, somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000. How long do you have to work as a teacher to get paid off $250,000?
Hey, it's like a 30-year mortgage. Yeah, 30-year mortgage.
So the point here is, no, you don't become a teacher. There are two things you become. You become a cutthroat lawyer, or you become a cutthroat doctor. And that's it. Or you go into the MBA program, become a cutthroat wolf of Wall Street.
Mm.
This is the net result of Hesburgh's betrayal of Catholic institutions. It starts. This is one of the Joneses' laws of life. It begins with sexual liberation and it ends with debt bondage. That's a universal rule. And it was certainly true of Notre Dame. It is true of the United States. It is true of Europe. And that's where we stand right now.
Well, explain that. What do you mean by that? Sexual liberation, and then it ends with bondage, with the financial.
Sexual liberation is, I wrote a book called Libido Dominandi, Sexual Liberation and Political Control.
Okay.
And one of the things, it's a history of the last 200 years, a history of psychology as well, or the evolution of modern psychology. What you find is that the main supporters of sexual liberation have always been the oligarchs. The Rockefellers are the prime example in American history. They were the main supporters of Alfred Kinsey,
right?
The entomologist from the University of Indiana. A total fraud, a complete fraud. The Rockefellers knew it. The statistics were completely bogus, and yet they supported him consistently throughout because they knew, and this is a quote from the book, the Wardell Pomeroy said that when he was going to be drafted in the Second World War, he wrote a letter saying that his work was essential to the defense of the United States because it explained how to bring large segments of the population under control. Direct quote from Wardell Pomeroy, from the horse's mouth. So what the oligarchs do is that they use the notion of freedom, sexual freedom, to lull the population into a comatose state. And once the people have disconnected and lost control, they become disoriented. They've lost, their families are disrupted, their lives are disrupted. Then the oligarchs behind the scenes get them addicted to debt, and they take over the country. That's what happened. 73, the turning point. That's when wages stopped going up. That's when credit cards came in, and that's when abortion was approved. So you see all of these things revolving around the same axis.
Yeah, Dr. Jones, I had Dr. Judith Reisman on the show for 2 hours. We discussed Kinsey at length. Now, I can understand how the sexual revolution that Kinsey, his philosophy, led to male impotence and addiction to pornography, some of the things she described. But I'm not quite getting how you make the case that it leads to debt.
First of all, what birth control is aimed at ethnic populations.
Okay.
Okay. If you look back at the United States in the 1930s, 1930 up to 1960, let's say, the Catholic population was growing demographically because Catholics did not use birth control. Demographic growth is the basis for political power. Okay? So Kennedy, John F. Kennedy was the final expression of that expansion, that demographic expansion. Why were the oligarchs interested in birth control? Because demographic growth is a threat to their power.
Okay, I get that, yeah.
Okay, what is an oligarch? What is an oligarch? A synonym for oligarch is creditor. These are the people that own the money. What does a creditor do with his money? He lends it out at interest. That's all they do. That's all they do. They have so much money to take care of every possible luxury item. They use the rest of it to lend it out at interest. This is the way they increase their power. The whole point of democratic government, democratic and demographic are based on the same word, right? It means demos, the people, the mob, whatever you want to call it. These people exercise their power through their votes. Okay, the oligarchs want a situation where you can overturn the votes and change it from one man, one vote to $1, one vote. That's what we have. That's the system we have now in this country.
Okay.
So how does the oligarch stay in power? The main vehicle for him staying in power is sexual liberation, because it blinds the people to their real interests. They become befuddled. They become easy to control. This is why the oligarchs always support sexual liberation. We had recently in Indiana the big coup d'etat. The governor passes the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. There was an uprising. The homosexuals claimed it was discriminatory against them. Who supported the homosexuals? It was the CEOs. And so what you had was, in effect, a coup d'etat. CEO from San Francisco flies in, overturns the law, rewrites the law, and then flies back to San Francisco. Well, do we have a government here in Indiana or not? Do you see the conflict that I'm pointing out?
Yeah.
That I'm trying to point out here?
Yes, I do. Yes.
What we have here is these proxy warriors. The whole history of the United States after World War II is the creation of covert warfare fought by proxy warriors. So civil rights movement is an example of it. The blacks we're talking about the Black Jewish Alliance that began with the founding of the NAACP. The civil rights movement is an example of the Black Jewish Alliance. The oligarchs, specifically the Jews, who are always a minority, along with the CEO, the creditors, they're always a minority. Homosexuals are always a minority. They use a broad front group to overturn the democratic process, basically. That's what they did. They countervened the democratic process, and they instituted their own rules. That's exactly the role that the homosexual now has in places, or had in this past year in the state of Indiana. He becomes the avant-garde that overturns majority rule. He overturns representative government, and this allows the oligarch to come in and take over. The oligarch, what is an oligarch? He's a creditor. How does he control? Through loans, through lending out money, through the mechanism of compound interest. This is the history of the United States in the post-World War II period. All of those democratic reforms that began with the populist movement at the beginning of the 20th century were all overturned by sexual liberation. It was the sexual revolution of the 60s. This is deregulation, the deregulation of the moral order. Deregulation began with sex because sex is attractive to the majority of people. And then once that happens, once the moral order is destabilized, then they come in with their usury, and that's how they establish total control.
Okay, very interesting. We're going to be coming up to a commercial break right now. We're with Dr. E. Michael Jones, the author of the book Abu Ghraib and the American Empire. His most recent book is The Church and the Jews. His website is culturewars.com. So we'll be right back after these messages with more of Dr. E. Michael Jones. And now a word from our sponsors. Pacific West Bamboo, your premier source for sustainable building material. They provide construction-grade and craft-grade bamboo material for all your indoor, outdoor, and gardening needs. Contact them for event planning and display building as well. 503-839-8126. Or you go to their new website, pacificwestbamboo.com. Or you can contact them on Facebook at Pacific West Bamboo. That's 503-839-8126. Amanda from Pacific West Bamboo was our first sponsor. She's been so good to us, so please support her in return. I want to make everybody aware of our new members section at www.oppermanreport.com. You can go there and sign up for a monthly, quarterly, or yearly subscription. You can even purchase episodes one by one. You get full access to brand new original content, new guests, new uncensored interviews, my own investigations and reports, and we're going to be adding sections with documents, images, police reports, either provided by myself or by my guests, or for my own investigations, my own reports. So you can go to oppermanreport.com and you can sign up there tonight. You can start listening tonight. Strawman. I want to mention Strawman. Strawman is a band out of Toronto, Canada. They're good friends of the Opperman Report. They're a trio of guys who share the same mindset most of us here do, and they put that energy into their words and music. So check them out at strawmanmusic.com and drop them a line to let them know that you heard them here on the Opperman Report. We'll be doing an interview with Sean Duffy soon. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Succeed as a Private Investigator, by visiting my PI website, emailrevealer.com. We also offer a computer and cell phone forensics. We can recover deleted text messages to uncover infidelity. We offer asset searches, locates, email tracing, background reports, and we can even trace your spouse's email address back to internet dating websites to catch them cheating online. You can reach us at 800-572-9762, or you can email me at emailrevealer@aol.com. New World Mexican Women. Everyone loves the New World Mexican Women, and their line of fine, handcrafted, authentic Mexican jewelry of stone mosaic and abalone stone inlay. In their first book, titled New World Mexican Women, available on lulu.com, they teach you how to make this jewelry, and they have a collection of love letters to their men from their hometown that have immigrated to the United States to find work. They have also published a new book entitled Azuquina to the Rodeo. It's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider, and she runs away with him without telling her family. You can find the New World Mexican Women by Googling New World Mexican Women. And you can ask them about their deals on wholesaling their fine jewelry and all of the other projects that they have going on. If you'd like to have your business or website advertised here and promoted all over the world on dozens of stations every day, give us a call at 800-572-9762 or email oppermanreport@gmail.com. And now back to our show. Well, not so soon. First, we're going to talk about MichiganMushrooms.net. They offer the highest quality chaga chunks available anywhere, picked fresh from healthy live trees in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, sun-dried and quickly shipped to you. They're very proud of their long-standing reputation as trusted farmers and collectors of wild, gourmet, and medicinal mushrooms. Customer service and offering high-quality products is very important to them. And they have a strict grading system that begins in the woods, and they would rather pass up a chunk that looks bad instead of passing it off to you, the customer. Additionally, they are recognized by the state of Michigan as mushroom experts. They are certified by the Department of Agriculture to sell 20 different species of mushrooms, and proof of this certification is available upon request. That is MichiganMushrooms.net or on Facebook, Michigan Mushrooms LLC. Got a brand new sponsor, The Rodeo of Doom by Miguel La Sala. The year is 2384, and Henry Fields is a down-on-his-luck adjunct professor in the architecture department at Andreas Tangen University in Los Angeles. But he has one thing going for him that others don't. He has enough of the coveted EP14 to live to be 200, if he wants to. Not that hard. When he saves a woman for certain death with a few drops of the EP14, a corrupt government agency tries to blackmail him into selling off his supply. Just when it seems like it might be a good idea, all hell breaks loose. The Rodeo of Doom was written by Miguel La Sala and edited by Margaret A. Harrell, the author of Keep This Quiet, memoir series. Now, she was also the copy edited Hunter S. Thompson's breakthrough book, Hell's Angels. According to Harrell, the Rodeo of Doom will grip you and pull you into the wild ride of a different reality. This is a consciously fast-paced journey into the future. Author Miguel La Sala reveals his craft by intricately weaving in fine details for his reader and keeps you anxiously anticipating what will happen next. Do not wait to read this book. There will surely be more to come from this author. The Rodeo of Doom is available on Amazon.com, and there's a link to the Rodeo of Doom in the Opperman Report bookstore. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. We're here today with our guest, Dr. E. Michael Jones, the author of Abu Ghraib and the American Empire. Also, his most recent book is Church and the Jews. And his website, if you want to contact him at his website, is culturewars.com. Dr. Jones, before we get into Abu Ghraib, let me ask you a quick question. How do you support this effort? How are you funded?
By people who buy my books and magazines.
Okay, so everybody go make sure you check out the books and the magazine, okay, to keep this effort going. So, Dr. Jones, what can you tell us about Abu Ghraib?
Well, the background to the story is I was invited by the law school of the University of Valparaiso here in Indiana to take part in a symposium on torture. So, I had heard about these atrocities as much as anyone else had, and I started to look into it and do research, and eventually came up with a long paper that I was going to present there, and that is the ebook, which is available on Kindle now. But it was what I found was, first of all, who's responsible for this? Who's responsible for this? And you go look in the first level, and it looks like women. It looks like a triumph of feminism. I mean, you had the lady there, I forget her name. Was it Lindy, I think? Anyway, the lady on the picture there torturing some guy, and then her superior was a woman, and then the whole operation is a woman. But you look deeper, and it turns out that the Israelis are involved in this thing. So it just exposes the whole ugly nature of the empire, the American empire, and the people that it's corrupting or being corrupted by to do its bidding. So I got to the symposium, I start giving my talk, and I start talking about the involvement of feminism. Well, the university professors are all upset because you can't say anything bad about feminism. And I said, well, look, it's not just me. I mean, everybody knows it was all women who were involved in these things, And then I said, even Barbara Ehrenreich said that a uterus is no excuse for not having or no substitute for a conscience. Well, they blew up at that. I mean, they just blew up at that. They were just furious at me. And I said, well, am I wrong to quote Barbara Ehrenreich? Isn't she a feminist just like you? Can you be a reasonable feminist, or is that impossible? Anyway, so it turns out that my talk did not make it into the festschrift that was supposed to be published. I don't know whether it ever got published or not, but anyway, my essay was not included. So I published it in Culture Wars, and now it's available as an ebook. But I mean, I mention this simply to show the constraints that are placed upon you in an academic environment. I mean, what are you allowed to talk about exactly? It's not even clear anymore. Anything that's not offensive. Well, it's hard to do any serious research or writing if the criterion is that you're not allowed to offend anybody.
Yeah, that does seem to be another branch of oppression on freedom of speech. Now there's new political correctness in the speech and all that kind of stuff that you're not allowed to talk.
No, and it's becoming. It goes hand in hand with oligarch control. They're exerting. Once they get control of the political process, they start using their proxy warriors to enforce speech codes on everyone else, so that everyone just becomes a docile slave to the system that they've created. So we have lots of sports, and you can have a whole network dedicated to bloviating about whether Cam Newton is a bad sport or not, to keep people distracted. The main distraction, though, is sexual liberation, because it numbs the mind. And as Michael Hudson pointed out in his analogy, killing the host, talking about parasites, that's what a parasite does. It takes over the organism and it attacks the brain, so that the organism starts replicating itself in the interest of the parasite rather than in its own interest. So the analogy here would be the media and universities. They are there to numb the brain so that the parasite can take over and have the labor that the organism creates go to their benefit.
Getting back to Abu Ghraib for a second, you mentioned that it was Israeli connection or control of this. What do you have?
Yeah, Shin Beth had its agents there instructing. There was a long history of collaboration with Shin Beth over torture techniques. And a lot of them, I go into detail in that, a lot of them were repudiated by Shin Beth because of the outcry in Israel, but they got implemented by the United States during the invasion of Iraq.
Okay. Did anybody ever go to jail for that? For the torture at Abu Ghraib?
What happened to those? No, I don't think anybody went to jail. It's been a while since I've written the article, and I don't know what happened to it subsequently. But as far as I know, no, I don't really think anyone was demoted or anything for that. Mm-hmm. I can't think of anyone. I can't think of any trials. Certainly none of the people who were the main architects were obviously not in Iraq. These were the people who collaborated with the Bush administration to give permission for these techniques. Nothing ever happened to them. Nothing ever happened to the Bush administration. This is a history. I mean, in a sense, we have a history here of this type of behavior. The classic example right now being Hillary Clinton. Her behavior in the role she played in the overthrow of Gaddafi in Libya, I think constitutes a war crime, certainly by the criteria established in Nuremberg. I think her husband is involved in the same type of situation in his attack on Serbia. Why did Slobodan Milosevic end up in The Hague being tried and not Bill Clinton? Wasn't Slobodan Milosevic a Serb? Wasn't Serbia attacked by the United States? Or did I miss something here? And yet it turns out that the winners, the people who win these wars, never get tried for the crimes that they commit. It's just a sad state of affairs.
I would agree with you, especially in the case of Gaddafi, because not only was Gaddafi murdered, but his sons were hunted down and murdered.
There's a documentary on YouTube called Semantics, and in it you can see how clueless Gaddafi was at what really was happening. The people. This was not a situation where the people of Libya were complaining. No, that was a pure fiction of the Western media, that somehow the people were demonstrating against Gaddafi. That was never the case, and he knew it. And yet he couldn't figure out what was going on. It was basically these proxy warriors that the United States and NATO had brought in. Then, in addition to a no-fly zone, so that when the Libyan people, when they go out on the streets and protest in favor of Gaddafi, they kill them. And then after they got killed, they blame it on him. And this is the exact same modus operandi that got used in Syria, except that it didn't work in Syria. It seems to have broken down. We're talking about the same modus operandi that began with the overthrow of Mossadegh in Iran. Psychological warfare, the use of the press to manipulate mobs of people to give the impression that the people no longer accept someone as a ruler and that the new ruler should be accepted. That playbook really hasn't changed at all. It was the same thing in the Ukraine, the coup d'etat that was staged by Victoria Nuland. But again, it seems that world consciousness has reached a point where certain people have begun to understand what is going on. And so the Ukraine, in a sense, the coup d'etat in the Ukraine backfired when Crimea voted to realign itself with Russia. I'm sure that's not what Victoria Nuland had in mind. But I think what happened here is that finally the Russians have finally understood the techniques of proxy warfare and how they are being used against them, the techniques of economic warfare that got used against them during the Yeltsin era when Larry Summers and Jeffrey Sachs orchestrated the looting of the Russian economy and putting it in the hands of the oligarchs. And now they are putting these lessons, having learned these lessons, they've come up with a way of countering them, which we're now seeing in Syria, where Russia has basically turned the tide, and now it looks as if Assad is going to stay, and it's not going to be the easy overthrow that Gaddafi was in Libya.
It seems that our opposition here is, it's worldwide. They got all the money. They're extremely powerful. They got the media. They got the banks. What do you see as a pathway for us to get out from under this oppression?
Well, the main pathway is consciousness. And I think we all are, in a sense, materialists, and we tend to denigrate the notion of consciousness. But and also, we have to understand, we have to view this from a theological point of view, that God is in charge of human history. And God cannot allow human history to have a negative outcome. That can't happen. So all the evil that exists in the world has one purpose in mind, namely some type of consciousness of the good. How the evil that exists can only exist in God's mind to bring about the good. The classic example in the Bible is the story of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph gets sold into slavery, which is obviously an evil thing, betrayal by his brothers. He ends up going to Egypt, where he then rises in power to be the right-hand man of the Pharaoh and in charge of the granaries. And then famine breaks out in Israel. The brothers have to come, and there's a long confrontation, and finally he reveals who he is. And then he says to them, the evil that you intended to do to me has been turned by God's power into good. That is shorthand for the entire story of human history. That is the story of human history from God's point of view. And that has not changed in our day. And so what we're seeing here is the rise of global consciousness, which is always the prelude to some type of change. You have to have change in consciousness first before you can have change in institutions. And I think that's what's happening now across the world. There is a consciousness that didn't exist before. And this is important because we're talking about covert warfare. And in a sense, in order to be effective, covert warfare has to be covert. And if we know what a false flag operation is, for example, which nobody knew about 20 years ago, well, we know something, and it's not as effective. And I think that's what we're seeing here now, a change in consciousness, a change in the global consciousness. I've talked about this. I've gone to Iran a number of times, and I said, what we're talking about is a return to logos. Logos is the Greek word for reason or order. Logos is the order of the universe. And the thing that's driving this turn to logos, especially in Iran and parts of the Islamic world, is the presence of chaos. So chaos, in a sense, has the natural reaction to chaos is to seek some type of logos. What is the real order of things, and how can we work to achieve this order? I think that's what's happening right now.
Well, I can see that. Well, first of all, I have a couple questions for you. Can you point to a time in history, another country that's been able to take power back from the oligarchs?
One of the great reform movements in the Catholic Church was the Counter-Reformation. Up until the break of Luther, the church was pretty much controlled by usurers. In other words, oligarchs. The cardinals would bribe other cardinals with money from either borrowed from the Medici or the Fugger family in Germany, and then they would the guy who paid out the most bribes would become elected pope. And that system broke down, and there was a reform. Now, the problem is that, and it was successful in many ways in rolling back the Reformation, which was a looting operation. There are two causes of the Reformation. One is lust, and the other is greed. And what the Counter-Reformation did was it succeeded in bringing large portions of Europe back into the Catholic fold. It didn't succeed completely, and as a result, usury took root in two countries specifically, England and Holland. And because usury took root there, this was the beginning of modern capitalism. And we have been that battle has been fought for all of these years. There was a comeback in Germany at the end of the 19th century. That was destroyed by World War I. I mean, I have, as I said, I wrote a book called Barren Metal, which is a history of capitalism. There are various comebacks. I've described two of them in this book. There was a comeback in the United States, the populist movement, leading to the Mariner Eccles as head of the Fed. A comeback. Labor made a comeback against usury, all the way up until the Paul Volcker era, when usury, that's the era we live in now. We still haven't gotten out of that era, where the creditors and the usurers basically took over the government when Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher became head of those two respective countries. So it goes back and forth. And I think we've reached a moment where the oligarchic power has become so tyrannical that we can expect a reaction. But the reaction has to begin with consciousness. And that's what I'm trying to achieve here. Some type of new consciousness of where the real problem is and where the real solution is.
But overall, you'd say you feel optimistic?
I have to feel optimistic because I'm a Christian. Because I believe that God is in charge of human history. And there are people who are evil, okay? The evil that you intended to do to me has been turned by God's power into good. That's what I believe. And that's what I believe is happening in our day, even though it's hard to see it sometimes.
Oh boy, thank you so much for coming on. You know, this is very good stuff. I hope you enjoyed your time on the show because I'd like to have you back.
No, but it was my pleasure, and I'd be happy to come back.
Okay, before you go, I want you to first of all, when you come back, what would you like to talk about?
Well, what haven't I talked about?
Okay,
yeah. I mean, what seemed the most problematic of what I said? We should probably resolve that. You know, if there's something that you didn't quite understand or didn't make sense, or that's what we should resolve. You know, let's see what kind of feedback you get.
Yeah. Okay.
And that would be the basis of the next talk.
Okay, great. And how can people find you? What are you doing next? You got any appearances coming up?
The website is culturewars.com. You can contact me by email at jones@culturewars.com, and I'm involved in a project, a history of covert warfare.
Dr. E. Michael Jones, thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
I'll be talking to you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, there we had Dr. E. Michael Jones. Very interesting stuff. They originally had planned to come in about the Abu Ghraib, but they went all over the place, and great. I really enjoyed it. His website is culturewars.com. His most recent book is Church and the Jews. We were discussing today, well, we touched on it, is Abu Ghraib and the American Empire. And if you enjoyed the show, please check out oppermanreport.com. There's a lot of extra shows on there in the members section that are only available to members, subscribers. And it's by subscribing to the membership section that we're able to keep the Friday night shows free and the Saturday afternoon shows free. Because now we're on Friday night, we're on People's Internet Radio all over Ireland. We're on the Awake Network. We're on public streaming radio which is like big in Florida, and then iHeart and Spreaker and YouTube and all these places that carry the show. And that's all free, So in order to keep all that free, then Saturday afternoons we're on American Freedom Radio, which is on 30 affiliates all over the country and all over the world. It's on AM/FM in New Hampshire and Maine and Florida. But to keep this going, we need donations, but also to the member section. If you can keep the member section coming in with new memberships every month, that's what that's what we're trying to build up. So you can go to oppermanreport.com and become a member. And in exchange for your small donation, you get access to the member section, additional shows that we're doing for you. I just spent this week down at the Bernie Sanders rally and at the Hillary Clinton rally. I'm going to be attending the town hall on the 18th, and then I'll be at Bernie Sanders' headquarters for his victory speech on Saturday night. If you're not registered to vote and you're here in Nevada or South Carolina, you got to get out and get registered to vote ASAP. You can do it online in Nevada here. It's very simple. It takes a couple of seconds. You print out that email you get back, has your confirmation number on it. You bring that with you. You wave it in their face. We can go down to caucus 11 a.m., February 20th. I guess that's about it. You can also donate by PayPal at oppermanreport@gmail.com. All right, guys, listen, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. E. Michael Jones. The book is Abu Ghraib and the American Empire. I just wrote another recent book, Church and the Jews. But if you go on Amazon, you'll see he has about 20, 30 different books that he writes. A lot of them are only $3 a piece. You can get them on your Kindle and stuff like that and download them. If you go to, by the way, another way to support the show, too, is when you go to oppermanreport.com and you see those ads on there, those Google ads, you click on those ads. We get a couple of bucks from that, too, every month. And we're right toward the end of the month, too, so we can use that check. These are the things that keep us running. And when you're watching on YouTube, the YouTube channel is Ed Opperman YouTube channel. You go there, you subscribe, become a follower there, you subscribe to the channel. And then at the beginning where it says skip this ad, don't skip the ad. Let the ad run, and we get a couple of pennies from that every time you do that. So that's what keeps us going. If we could build that up, the YouTube channel, and we could build up the people clicking on the ads on the website, we can get Google to pay for all this, okay? And then I could focus on this, because right now I'm taping a show in fact, tomorrow I'm taping 2 shows. Taping a show about a true crime story, and then we're doing another show about the JFK for the younger generation, for the younger generation to learn about the JFK assassination. Then I'm doing a live show Friday night with Dan Dyer, about sex and occult and mysticism in TV and media and stuff like that. And then taping a show with Cynthia McKinney. Dr. Cynthia McKinney's coming up. Saturday afternoon, we're doing a show about, I think it's Danny Castellaro and the Octopus software and all that stuff. And we're doing a whole thing on that, which I still have to get familiar with. I'm not up to date on that, but that's coming up Saturday afternoon, 3 p.m. on American Freedom Radio. Listen, guys, thank you so much. Don't forget the member section. That's what's keeping us going. Okay, and I'd hate to wind up, a month from now without being able to fund all this as we go on, because I've been increasing. As you notice, the audio is a lot better now. We've added memory. I had to buy a keyboard. We had to buy a new hard drive for the laptop. I had to buy a new battery for the laptop. And laptop's going to need memory too. But we also need a whole nother workstation too that we have to get here, just dedicated just for broadcast. So there's a lot of stuff coming up here that we need support. And also too, I'd love to get a really good camera and a really good recorder, mobile, that when I'm at these events like the Sanders rally and the Hillary rally and the Sanders the town hall and all that stuff, that we could broadcast live from there with good sound quality. So that's what we're working on next. Okay, guys, thank you so much.